I'm on my way to Rongai just to hear you tell a lie. Deep inside, I wanna die. I'm on my
Hello guys, welcome back to my channel where we're talking about mental health, everything mental health and mental hygiene. Today I'm happy to host Dr. Waweru, and we're going to dive deeper into mental health. So I'm just gonna let her introduce herself.
Good morning. I don't know, it's good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. I'm assuming that this is being watched by people in different areas, so good morning or good afternoon to you. So I'm Pauline Waweru, Dr. Pauline Waweru. I'm a mental health therapist by profession, or what they call licensed professional counselor, and I am based here in Kennesaw, Georgia. I actually have two jobs. I work in the hospital as a mental health therapist, or they call them behavioral therapists, and then I also do my own private work where I see clients on a private basis. And my counseling office is called Gemstone Counseling Center. So one of the reasons I'm so proud of you for doing this is because you're not only creating awareness about this topic, but you're also bringing people like me who would otherwise not have a voice to speak, or a public voice.
I don't think there's a lot of Kenyans that know that you are here. You're in Atlanta, and we can get resource. We can get help from someone who is familiar.
Right.
The fact that you can kind of relate to me or to other Kenyans just makes you perfect.
Yeah, the thing is that people suffer in silence.
Exactly.
Because nobody wants to come out and say, oh my God, I'm so depressed, I'm suicidal, I am struggling, I hear voices sometimes, I can barely sleep.
Right.
So we have such a huge problem in our community. There's also this fear of being judged.
That's a big one.
Yes. And I have to tell you, there was one time I walked into a room. I was doing my usual, assessments in the emergency room, and I saw someone that is familiar to me, and the person told me, say, please do not share this with anyone. That was the first thing they said to me. As soon as they saw me, they freaked out. They were like, oh my God, I could never think of you being here. And I said, you know what, I am not here to judge anyone. And I said to them, the people that I see here, this is kind of beggars issue. What happens here stays here. And so I'm so proud of people coming out and saying, this is the time for me to seek help. And there is help, and that's what I'm telling people. Discussion about mental health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna jump in and talk about depressions. Are there any symptoms that we can look at as, let's say, our loved ones are going through a depression? How can we tell that they're going through a depression, and how can we help? How can we be a safe place and not come to them like judgmentally? Yeah.
So that's a very, very good question, because I think depression is probably one of the most common types of mental illness, particularly how it affects our population. And it's so interesting how depression can mask itself in such a way that sometimes we don't think we are depressed.
Right.
And when we do like clinical diagnosis of depression, we look at the period of time that someone has had certain symptoms, and I'm gone. Another thing that people should pay attention to is when you're always sad and always so worthless and feeling so helpless. And this could go, it's normal to feel helpless, especially when you don't have a solution to a problem. But when you wake up every day and all you do is feel like you have lost hope and feel like you cannot help yourself, and this goes on day by day by day, then there's a problem. This is happening for such a long period of time that you can barely function, then it becomes a problem. Another thing that I ask people to pay attention to is sleep. When you can barely sleep, like days, nights go, you cannot sleep, then there's a problem. On the other side, if you are sleeping all the time, you don't want to wake up, you don't want to go to work, then there's a problem. So sleep can go either way. It can be either you have insomnia, or you have hyper where you sleep all the time, or where you don't sleep at all. So if this is going on so long that you're barely able to function, then there is a problem.
Okay.
Another thing that I tell people is how you connect with people.
Okay.
So let's assume, Grace, that you're an extrovert, you love people, you want to hang out with people, and then something happens and we no longer see Grace, and Grace locks herself in the room for days and days and days and doesn't answer the phone, doesn't talk to anyone. So that in itself is a sign that something is going on with Grace. The other thing is when you have no energy to do anything.
Right.
Someone that is typically very active, very busy, very hardworking, all of a sudden cannot get up. The other thing that we will talk about, and which is a deep topic for me, is suicidal thoughts. Like in the process of all that, you feel like you don't want to wake up every day. You feel like you want to die. You start thinking, oh my God, the world would be better without me, and saying, oh God, life has gotten me so bad. I do not have any will or power to live and to move on. So it's not just one symptom. It's this is how we know that someone is depressed. If you're saying these things have been happening, let's say over a period of 6 months or 4 months or 3 months, and you're not feeling better, I mean, people who have those little pockets of times when they feel a little energy and they wake up, eat, do but then they go right back into. And then another thing, of course, I wanted to bring up is that when people are dealing with severe depression, they may not know what is going on. They feel helpless. That's where the feeling of helplessness comes in. They do not know what to do. They do not know what is going on. They feel confused, like what happened to me? And I did share with you that I've had an episode where I was so depressed that I did not want to wake up. I did not want to talk to no one. I felt like I was waking up every day thinking, I hope this is the last day of this, of my life. Right. And so yeah, depression is not one thing. Depression is a lot of things. And the reason we miss it is because there are certain things we are looking for. Like when we go to public places, we are looking for someone that's really sad. I could come to public places and wear a mask. And I could look all happy, all relaxed, but what is going on deep inside me, nobody really has a clue. And so I'm saying it's not because we see it, it is because we feel it. And I want people to kind of notice those things even amongst family members. Depression is so real that it affects people that you would never imagine. So when people walk into my office, or when they walk into that hospital room, sometimes I look at them and I say, oh, who would have thought? Because they're normal people like you and me, or people who have good jobs, highly functional. So what I'm trying to say here is that depression does not have a face. It doesn't. It will affect everybody. It will affect people of all different colors and socio-economic status. It doesn't pick. It doesn't choose.
Okay, and let's talk about coping skills, because I know when I was going through like a time where I was super depressed, I was using unhealthy coping skills. Maybe I would feel some type of way, maybe I'll feel very low, depressed, and I will just reach out for a drink. Can you talk about how people are resorting to kind of mask their depression by either engaging in risky behaviors or drinking, substance abuse? Can you go deeper into that?
So that's a very good question. So if you think about it, people reach out for what is available to them or what is accessible to them at any one given time. So if someone is feeling really depressed and they do not have access to a support system that they can tap into, or they do not have access to therapy or mental health services, or they do not know where to go, they have no idea, they are sick, they are feeling sad, they are feeling withdrawn, but they have no idea what to do. So the first thing people do is to get some sort of relief. And I think that's what separates the good coping skills from the healthy and unhealthy coping skills. So people start by saying, you know what, if I had a drink, I would probably feel better. And so they'll have a drink today, but then tomorrow, because this is a persistent problem, they will feel the same way, and then they'll have another drink, and this goes on and on and on, and then they tell themselves, this seems to be working,
right?
And so they become more addicted to something because it's their coping skill, but it's an unhealthy coping skill.
Absolutely.
And so it's like when you're drowning, and you're trying to save your life, you cling on whatever you can find.
Absolutely.
And so they are clinging on what is available to them. And that's what I'm saying, that we as the loved ones, we as your friends, we as your family members should ask ourselves, what is going on with Grace? Because if we are available to Grace, if we are accessible to Grace, then we can kind of say, hey Grace, what is going on? What's up with that?
Absolutely.
So whatever is available to you is what you reach out to. And I think that is what separates the healthy and unhealthy coping skills, because your healthy coping skill, if it's available to you, is what you tap into. If the unhealthy coping skill is what is available to you, is what you tap into.
Great information. Now, I want to talk about the men and depression. Now, men in our society is supposed to be these alpha males who don't feel any emotion, they don't deal with depression. And so since we're a society that promotes silence, a lot of men are suffering in silence and are drowning every day. How can we as women be there for them, or just like encourage them to come out and, you know, be honest with themselves and say, you know what, I'm going through this and this, or I'm deeply depressed, can you help? I need some help.
You're very right, because the way mental health affects men in our society is troubling, to say the least. And a majority of the men prefer not to talk about their problems. One, it's a cultural thing that, like you mentioned, it's a sign of when a man is showing a weakness, then that's a weak man. They should never cry in public. They should never tell people their problems. And so many people had, because of that cultural component, where we grew up in a society where men are supposed to be the shield, and so when they are the protector, so when they are going through their own issues, they should not really bring them out. They should be able to deal with them, so to speak. So they are men, they're strong, they're the alpha male. They should be able to hold it together. They should not seek help, because seeking help is a sign of weakness. They should not tell people what is going on. So that is a huge cultural problem, and I think that again brings the stigma about men seeking help. You know, like I know I have talked to men who say, can you imagine me walking into a therapy session? What would I be talking about? But the reality is there's so much that they can talk about, because they hurt deep, and the society has no idea how much our men are wounded, and how much they hurt, and how much they need healing, just like the women, or just like the females do. And again, we should say, regardless, remember when I talked about depression doesn't choose, it doesn't have a face.
It doesn't.
It will pick on men, it will pick on women. And so we as a society need to embrace our men, and to tell them that the same way depression affects a woman is the same way it affects a man.
Absolutely.
And in fact, depression in males has risen to a very high level. And so there's a lot that is that's building up on men, the pressure that they have to yield to certain things, they have to behave a certain way, they have to provide, they have to feed, they have to take care of business. And so we need to take some of that away from them and say, you know what, I realize that you have a huge task. I realize that you have a huge responsibility, but you're human. You just the way my heart would be wounded and need healing is the same way a man would need the same. So we need to pay attention to our men.
Right.
We need to pay attention to what they're doing. We need to pay attention to where they're going. We need to pay attention to who they're talking to. We need to pay attention to what their coping skill is. A lot of men, because they don't know any other way, will probably start drinking.
Absolutely.
And then it becomes, you know, a routine drink here and there. The next thing you know, all they do, because that's their coping skill. But remember, we talked about the unhealthy coping skill, and because it works for them and it's accessible to them, all he has to do is drive to the gas station and get a beer. It's accessible, so he's gonna use that. And so I'm telling men too, and I'm saying, you know, come out. It's the same way women can get help. It's the same way our men should get. We get it. We trust you. We believe in you. You are the alpha male. But we also need you to realize that the same way a woman or a female needs help is the same way a man needs help. And I'm appealing to men that if you know that you hurt so deep that sometimes all you want to do is hurt yourself, or you feel like you want to hurt yourself, it is okay to get help. It's okay to reach out and say, what? I'm a male. I'm an alpha male, but I also get wounded. I also need healing, and there's help that is specific for me. I hope one day you can do like a session where you can just talk about these issues and you know, talk about the male, because
the male
our male has been forgotten.
Absolutely.
You know, there's that campaign that's been going on in Kenya about the boy child.
The boy child.
So I think it's time we also paid attention to the boy child here, especially our young males. I cannot tell you how sad it has been for me lately, working so closely with young men who are struggling with addiction.
Wow.
Who are struggling with opioid addiction, who are dealing with alcohol addiction, and it's such a grave problem in our society. It's such a deep problem in our community. Something has to be done about it. Otherwise, we are losing a whole generation of young men, and you can imagine that sometimes reaching out to them and saying, I'm here for you, and they're looking at you like, how can you help me? Yeah, actually the first question they'll ask me is, how can you help me? And I always tell them, tell me how you want me to help you. And then I just realized that when you allow people to be vulnerable and to kind of get to that point where they can say, I'm broken, I need help, it's powerful to hear them saying, how can you help me? And me telling them, you got it in there. Let's go in there and see what's going on. And then I have had men come to me and say, I did not ever think that these services are available to us. I have a young man coming in and saying, you know, do you have other male clients that come to you to seek help? And I saying, yes, I do. And I'm so happy when I see one male client come to me and I tell them, I am so happy that you did this. I am so proud of you for coming out and saying, what, I don't care if I'm a man or a young man, I need help and I'm here to get help. And you know, a lot of times they come in with a lot of anxiety and apprehension, thinking, oh, what is she gonna do for me? And then they realize, oh, wait a minute, she is helping me get in touch with a feeling I have never wanted to deal with. And I think that's the beginning of healing, is when you allow people to get in touch with how they feel, with the things that hurt them, the things that pain them, that they've never talked about, the insecurities they've dealt with for years, but they've never talked about them. And the moment when you see them starting to deal with that and saying, oh, this is what's been going on since I was a young boy, and then saying, oh, I feel so much better.